Tonight, this is Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where the veil lifts one story at a time. If you're new here, welcome to the presentation. Now, tonight, across continents and decades, ordinary people have reported extraordinary encounters with creatures that defy logic and challenge belief. From glowing red eyes watching in a South African field to an enormous bat-like entity shaking an SUV in Florida, these accounts remind us that the world may still hold some secrets that science cannot explain. Witnesses describe beings a ship between man and beast, entities that vanish into the wilderness without a trace, and encounters so vivid that they leave behind physical evidence and lifelong unease. Now, in tonight's presentation, we'll dive into 9 chilling reports of werewolf-like creature prowling the suburbs, a colossal bat terrorizing Orlando, a winged humanoid in Pennsylvania, devilish hybrids in Virginia and Ohio, the historic hunt for the Hodag, a jackalope sighting in Turkey, a mysterious woman in the frozen Swiss Alps, and a violent attack by a shapeless force on a sugarcane farm. Each testimony is raw, unfiltered, and unforgettable, leaving us to ask, what is truly sharing this world with us, and how close have they already come to our lives? Before I start, I want to thank Mortal Clown for their donation. Thank you very much. So here we go. In the suburbs of South Africa, a young witness and his friends encounter strange red eyes and unexplainable footprints in a nearby field. What began as a childhood story of a werewolf became a chilling experience none of them would easily dismiss. So the witness states, I was about 12 years old when this happened. My family moved into a 13-story apartment building where we lived on the 4th floor overlooking typical suburban housing in South Africa. From my room, I could see my friend's house not too far to the left, and to the right of it was a rather large field of knee-high grass that stretched to a Ray Hill. Our building was situated on the peak of that hill. I hope that gives you an idea of the area. A few months after we initially met, my friend, whom I'll call Jay, told me about something he had seen and heard in that field late at night or in the early morning around 3 or 4 a.m. while he's preparing for a fishing trip. He mentioned that a few years before I moved there, one of the neighbors had gone out with his shotgun one night and shot in the general direction of this thing. He described it as a tall, dark mass in the shape of a werewolf standing on 2 feet with red eyes. The field was dark, unlike the rest of the town, which was well lit, only partially illuminated by the full moon, even from my window. At first, I took the story with a grain of salt, having the typical imagination of a kid who fancied spooky tales. So one evening, while I was in my room struggling to fall asleep with the lights off, I heard a strange growl or a howl coming from the direction of the field. Naturally, I peeked out the window. My imagination kicked in, and for a moment, I thought I saw something red moving in a blur. The distance from my window to the crest of the hill was about 300 meters, and I brushed it off as silly mind tricks. A few months later, I was about to join Jay on a fishing trip. We woke up at 3 a.m. to pack and load our equipment. From this house, there were two more houses to the right before the field started. His street was adjacent to the grounds of the apartment building where I lived, so I could see my window from the yard. As we were getting ready, we heard noises coming from the field and decided to investigate without leaving his yard. From there, we could see about 200 meters into the field, where we spotted two red specks that stayed very still. When we looked more closely, the specks seemed to blur or fade, so we had to look away and then look back quickly to see them again. These eyes were about 2 meters above the ground, if not more, and at that distance, it was hard to judge. And suddenly, we saw the eyes darting away, and we could barely make out the features of the tall black mass moving swiftly behind the hill. Now, after chatting about it, we decided to leave it at that, thinking we might have imagined things. We went fishing that day without further discussion of what we might or might not have seen. Then came the kicker. The following day, my brother, Jay, and I went exploring in that massive field. It was a dry spell, and all the grass is brown since we hadn't had rain for a few weeks. Now, notably, we found some ancient arrowheads, rusted and primitive looking, dating back about 200 years. As we walked along and approached the crest of the hill, I stumbled upon a footprint in the sand. This was a small clearing between the grass and what had to turn to sand. At first, the footprint appeared to be of some small animal, so my first reaction was, "Hey guys, look, a lion or a leopard must have gotten loose or something." But upon closer inspection, my perspective changed. The main footprint cushion was the size of a grown man's palm, with three smaller cushions indicating toes, and above them were three triangular indentations where the claws had been. The track didn't seem to be from something moving too fast, more like a quick walk. This was the first footprint we found, big with three toes and clearly clawed. The eerie part was that we discovered two more footprints. They were headed toward the building I stayed in, but curiously, they were spaced about 3 to 4 meters apart, and there were no prints before or after the ones we found. This all happened around 11 in the morning. My brother, who was most skeptical among us, fell silent when he saw the footprints. His reaction was shocking, and to this day, it gives me uneasy vibes. That silent response felt more unsettling than the actual footprints or whatever creature had made them. We didn't have cell phones back then, and I wish I could have taken pictures. That day is still vividly etched in my memory. Afterward, we continued exploring, but what struck me was how we never really discussed what we saw or found. It felt as if the sheer nature of it was too much for our minds to comprehend. Now, some of the accounts all the accounts I'm going to discuss tonight have a local legend or a local moniker to them. This creature that they saw the footprints of could have very been an Agagwe. And we're going to actually talk about a few other strange creatures as well tonight. So in the early morning of April 2022, a driver in Orlando, Florida, encountered something extraordinary beneath the I-4 overpass. What he witnessed was a colossal bat-like creature so massive and unnatural that it forever changed how he viewed the world. He states, early on Sunday, April 3rd, 2022, around 4:30 a.m., I was driving to work at Tire Plus in Orlando, Florida. My daily route took me along John Young Parkway, a busy street. About halfway through my drive, I would pass under the I-4 overpass with the Orange County Corrections Department, the county jail, immediately on my left. Now, usually, John Young Parkway is bustling with traffic during the day, but since it was so early on a Sunday, I barely saw anyone else on the road. Now, on that warm April morning, I had my window rolled down. I was listening to an audiobook when I suddenly started hearing a loud flapping noise reminiscent of an enormous American flags that fly outside my big car dealership. Initially, I thought it might be a truck with a flat tire on I-4. However, as I got closer, the noise intensified and my car began to shake. Now, I drive a mid-sized SUV, so it's not a small vehicle. As I approached the I-4 overpass, something caught my eye to the left. When I glanced out the window, I was shocked to see an enormous bat flying alongside me under the overpass on the busy street in Orlando. I realized this sounds unbelievable, but the creature I saw was larger than a truck. It had light brown fur, a body at least 10 feet long, and a wingspan that could have been twice that. Its face didn't resemble a typical bat. It had a flat snub nose like that of a vampire bat, but appeared more gorilla-like or even somewhat human, except for the two large fangs protruding from the top of its mouth. These fangs were about 6 inches long, curving outward, somewhat like tusks. It was flying near 20 feet away from me and never seemed to acknowledge my presence. Each flap of its wings produced a deafening noise that violently shook my car. It looked like the creature was struggling to stay in the air, appearing too heavy to maintain altitude. As it flapped its wings, I could see veins and cartilage through the wing membranes. It had long, skinny legs covered in the same light brown fur with long claws. I didn't think to count how many toes it had. Its thin tail measured about 4 feet long, ending in the patch of darker black fur resembling a cow's tail. Now, after we emerged from under the overpass, the bat shot straight upward, climbing higher and higher until it almost out of sight. It then turned left and flew along I-4. Now, at that point, I rolled up my window and pulled over to the side of the road. I started to dial 911, but hesitated. I knew I wasn't tired or half asleep. I don't take any prescriptions or recreational drugs, and I don't drink. However, I was at a loss for how to explain what I had seen to the police or anybody else. I feared no one would believe me, thinking I was either intoxicated or mistaken. Even if the police came, I wasn't sure what they could even do about it. I remained shaken for the rest of the day. The first person I told was my fiance, who was understanding, but may not have truly believed my experience. The next day, I told my younger brother, a firm believer in cryptids and supernatural phenomena. He suggested that I may have seen an owl. I had never heard of an owl before, but after looking it up online, I found its description matched that I had witnessed almost exactly. Before this incident, I had never believed in Bigfoot, Mothman, or similar creatures, thinking that something so significant living in the area would have been documented. However, after seeing the truck-sized bat flying under the busy interstate in the middle of Orlando, my perspective has changed. I'm doubtful anyone will actually believe my story. I wouldn't have thought it myself before April, but I felt compelled to share it. I don't want to sound dramatic, but that morning transformed my life and altered how I perceived the world. It's possible it was an owl or AHZOOL. Very similar to some of the other winged humanoids we've been describing. Now, Orlando is not too far from where we had many reports down in Pasco County. So maybe it was the same thing. I don't know. You have to excuse me. I may have to sneeze in a bit, so just letting you know. So, in this next account, on a summer night in 2005 near Chicora, Pennsylvania, a quiet gathering on a back porch turned into an unforgettable moment. Before stunned witnesses, a tiny winged humanoid with a human like form and glowing presence emerged from the shadows and vanished into the woods. Hi, Lon. I'm an avid reader of your site and thoroughly enjoy hearing other people's experience. Thank you for what you do. It helps me understand this mysterious world. Anyway, back in December of 2005, I had a very unusual sighting that felt almost like a blessing to witness, especially considering my high hopes for such an existence. My girlfriend at the time and a friend invited me to his parents' house in the rural area of Chicora, Pennsylvania, a place known for many other odd occurrences and sightings. And this is in Butler County. I just want to mention there have been a lot of weird things that happen in Butler County. Anyway, we joined a gathering of about 7 or 8 people. It was a casual evening, nothing crazy, no drugs to induce hallucinations. We sat on his parents' back porch as the sun set behind the trees. The house is situated in the thick wooded area and carried on conversations among friends. The night came and not much changed. The porch was more of a deck, roughly 10 by 15 feet, providing ample space for all of us to gather around a table. Now, on the far side of the deck, directly across from where I was sitting, my friend's mom had a large pile of pots and plants resting against the deck railing and the house railing. This area was illuminated by a spotlight, making our gathering very visible in the dark. Now, at this point, it was probably around 10 p.m., and the outside was almost pitch black. Suddenly, during one of those odd, quiet moments in the conversation, we heard a pot tink, as if it had been lightly bumped. Being in the woods at night, we all turned to see what kind of animal might be spying on us. And to our astonishment, as we turned, and I had a front row seat the whole time, we saw what looked like either an enormous moth, and I've seen big moths, but this thing was more than the size of a squirrel, or a relatively large bat shoot straight up in the pile of pots. However, this creature obviously had wings wrapped around his body like a tortilla. What blew my mind was that it had a human head with extremely long pointed ears that almost resembled antennas. There was no hair on this creature, though, and it shot straight up in the pile of pots, and what happened next totally threw us all into a spin. It reached its maximum height and hung suspended in the midair for about half a second. Then suddenly its wings burst open into a full spread right in front of the porch spotlight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was a perfect, slender human female body with wings attached along the entire side, stretching from her fingertips to her toes and beyond. The creature's body was solid and silhouetted against the light, but her wings resembled the texture of an earlobe, almost like bat wings. Being in the spotlight, I could see through her wings and observe the veins that carried blood throughout her body. I assumed her skin was a pale green because her entire body and wings were covered in tiny white hairs, which seemed to have a magical quality, casting a soft green glow over her form. Now, I drew pictures to try to capture how she first appeared, wrapped up in her wings, and then opened into a full spread, resembling an X shape. She was a combination of a human and butterfly with a biological twist of a bat. Now, biologically, I'd say that she had the density and weight of a large squirrel. She stood about a foot tall with body proportions that appeared identical to those of a human. The design of her wings was oddly beautiful, attached to her body in a way that made them stretch magnificently to complete her wingspan when she opened her arms and legs. Now, here's the part that doesn't make sense. When she first shot out of the pot, she hit a high point where she hung suspended in midair for about half a second before bursting open to reveal her graceful form. After that, she hung in the air for another half second making a total hang time of about 1 to 1.5 seconds. I'm trying to be precise with the timing because I am an animator and timing is everything in my work. After she showcased her complete spread form, despite her heavy biological makeup, she defied gravity and fluttered right over the table about 4 foot above us, then off the deck and into the woods. From the point A, the pots on the porch, to point B, the woods, she fluttered for about 7 to 10 seconds. It was dark, so once she left the porch's illuminated area, she quickly vanished as she crossed that line. All of us sat in silence for about 30 seconds and jaws dropped in disbelief. And I call this the Chikora Ferry, but there have been other fairy sightings in that area over the years and a lot of other winged beings as well, including the what we call the Butler Bat or the Butler Batman. So it is an area with a lot of strange sightings. So this next account, witnesses had described terrifying encounters with creatures that defy classification, part animal and part devil. With glowing eyes, unnatural leaps, and monstrous features, these beings left both humans and animals shaken to the core. Now, on January 12, 2006, a witness returned home to find a creature resembling a devil confronting his 6-year-old Labrador dog. This creature appeared to be an unusual mix of a monkey, a dog, and something devilish. Suddenly, it sprang onto its hind legs and bolted past the witness, nearly knocking him over to reach the open door that he had just walked through. The creature had long fangs, a monkey-like tail, and extremely bright, glowing eyes. In another report, an Ohio woman driving through Roanoke, Virginia around 2:30 a.m. described a similar encounter in the late 1990s. While navigating a dark road at night and taking a detour due to road construction, she drove past a sign that read Red Wolf Crossing near Elizabeth City when a creature leaped in front of her car. This creature was entirely black with very short, sleek fur, pointy ears, and a long, thin tail. The woman described it as cat-like, yet distinctively unlike any cat she had ever encountered. Its snout was flatter than a dog's, resembling that of a cat. The creature stood on its hind legs about 6 foot tall with a torso resembling that of a skinny man with a head like a large monkey. Despite its slender appearance, it had muscular legs and arms. So later, she contacted the U.S. Game and Wildlife Department, which informed her that there were no black wolves in the area. They suggested she may have even seen a feral dog or a wolf-like hybrid. However, the woman firmly insisted that it was neither a wolf nor a dog. Now, she noted that the creature may have been on all fours just before leaping. It jumped with such power and height that it cleared both lanes of the highway in a single bound. This indicated that it leaped more than 18 feet, approximately 6 meters, to cross the road. Dogs and wolves do not jump this far in one leap. Even larger animals like deer typically take several bounds to cross the road. Now, this creature may have actually been what people refer to as a devil monkey. And I've heard several people refer to this cryptid before, and they do come of various sizes, but I'm just assuming that this may have been what it was. Now, if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification button so you won't miss any of our live shows or new episodes when they drop. Now, in this next account, in 1913, a Phoenix newspaper published a startling letter from a rancher who claimed to have seen the infamous Hodag lurking near his property. Described as a creature that was part wolf, part lion, and as large as a calf, his sighting sparked plans for a midnight hunt on the Arizona frontier. Now, this letter to the editor appeared in the Arizona Republican on Sunday, February 2nd, 1913. It discusses the sighting and the hunt for a hodag, a beast typically described as the size of a large bulldog with 2 horns and a series of spikes along its spine. Now, while residents of Wisconsin have traditionally claimed the Hodag as their local monster, other sightings have been reported nationwide. Now, here's the account. Ever since I saw the article in your paper a few Sundays ago, I've been on the lookout for that Hodag you mentioned. Just last night, I saw him. My son and I went out to a small knoll near my property, just as we had done several times before, to see if the animal would appear. About 9:30, my son said, "Dad, something is sniffing down there." When I looked, there was a Hodag. It was perfectly visible. We crept down toward him with a shotgun, but he heard us coming and darted around the hill so quickly that I thought I may have mistaken and hadn't seen him at all. However, my son said he saw him, so I'm confident I did too. We didn't get a perfect look at him as we were positioned above him, but in the light we could see that he was about the size of a yearling calf and had a tawny color. We noticed his short front legs on the uphill side, and his larger legs as he ran away. His paws resembled those of a mountain lion, but he looked more like a giant wolf. We planned to gather some neighbors and who live about 6 miles over the hills and try to capture that critter next Wednesday night. So this was on Sycamore Creek Ranch outside of Phoenix. So I don't know what they call it. I never could find a follow up to that. But like I said before, Hodags are primarily known to be creatures from Wisconsin. And I'm not even sure that's what he saw. But back in 1913, I guess that's what they thought it was. So we'll go with that for now. In this next account, in May 2022, a retired U.S. veteran driving through the mountains of eastern Turkey claimed to see a living jackalope illuminated in his headlights. Described as a rabbit-like creature with antlers and the gait of a dog, it challenged every notion of myth and reality he once held. Now, a U.S. military veteran had claimed he observed a flesh and blood jackalope in his headlights while driving on a mountain road in Turkey's eastern Anatolia region, specifically in Malatya province. In May 2022, a retired U.S. military veteran contacted Legend of America to share his encounter. He says, "Greetings. I want to say that a jackalope phenomena isn't mythical or extinct. Unfortunately, I didn't have a camera with me, but I am currently in Malatya, Turkey. 3 nights ago, I was driving down a treacherous mountain road at about 30 kilometers per hour when something came down the hill and onto the road. At first, I thought it was a rock, so I slammed on the brakes, but then it hit my headlights. I had never seen anything like this before. It was the most fascinating creature I'd ever encountered. Naturally, I was very curious about what kind of animal it was. It was approximately 3 foot tall at the back, ran like a dog, but looked like a rabbit, and had miniature antler rack on its head, which would make the biggest and most majestic buck deer jealous. So when I got home, I decided to look this creature up online, wondering if it was exclusive to the region of the world. What I found was an overwhelming response of its fake legends, myths, and cryptozoological, and a scientific term often used to dismiss things as fake. However, one collaboration site caught my attention. It claimed that all horns grown on a rabbit are cancerous and not made of calcium, stating that they are actually tumorous material. While this site is correct in saying that tubers can be cancerous, they are always misshapen, saggy, and unappealing in appearance. What I saw had regal-looking calcified antlers. So I guess I am officially labeled as one of those nutcases and embellished storytellers. But I know what I saw. It was very clear, with nothing obstructing my view. There was no fog, and my headlights lit it up nicely. So maybe it was a jackalope. I don't know. So in this next account, high in the frozen Alps, 2 Swiss soldiers guarding a remote antenna came face to face with an inexplicable visitor. A lone woman stood motionless in the sub zero wilderness, silent and unmoved before vanishing into the woods with inhuman speed. A Swiss army company was in the Alps installing a radio antenna when a mysterious woman showed up in the cold, remote area. Strangely, she was not dressed for the frigid weather, yet she seemed unaffected by it. This incident occurred while I was doing my army service in Switzerland in the Alps. I'm not allowed to discuss specifics of the case or the mission, but I'll try to keep things clear. My company had installed an enormous antenna that needed to be guarded by two soldiers day and night. We were stationed on top of a hill, far from any city and close to the vast forest. At 1800 hours, I had just started my 6-hour watch with another soldier. Everything went smoothly. We passed the time smoking cigarettes and keeping ourselves occupied until our watch ended at midnight. Then we received a call from a superior who informed us that one of the soldiers scheduled for the next watch couldn't come, so one of us had to stay for another 6 hours in temperatures of minus 20 degrees Celsius. We flipped the coin to decide who would stay from midnight to 6 in the morning. Unfortunately, I lost and I was left waiting for the other soldier to join me for the night watch. They sent another soldier, but to be honest, he wasn't the most reliable, as I knew he would likely sleep through the night when I saw him climbing the hill with his sleeping bag. And that's precisely what happened. He settled into the tent and fell asleep. It turned out to be the coldest, longest night of my life, but nothing extraordinary happened during that time. Now, the weird part occurred in the morning. We received another call from our superior informing us that we had an NBC, which is a nuclear biological chemical exercise. This meant we had to wear our anti-chemical suits, including gas masks, all day long. I was frustrated and exhausted as I couldn't sleep in that suit, and sleep was my only reward for a grueling 12-hour watch. And when I stepped out of the tent, I saw something that still terrifies me to this day. A woman was standing next to the antenna, not moving. She was about 5 meters in front of the tent. The rising sun was behind her, so I couldn't clearly see her face. I knew she was a woman because she had long hair and noticeable curves. Remember, we were in the middle of nowhere, and this lady was standing there, appearing frozen in place. I started to panic and called the other soldier over to show him what I was seeing, and to my surprise, he wasn't scared at all. He told her to leave because she wasn't allowed in the area, but she didn't budge. She remained there, apparently looking at us, or at least in our direction. I was confused. How could a woman ignore two soldiers telling her to leave a restricted area? I mean, this is Switzerland. The army may not be that intimidating, but people usually wouldn't stick around in a situation like this, especially 6 in the morning. What was she doing there? Clearly not dressed for the cold. How long had she been standing there, and how had she arrived? I didn't hear any footsteps, so questions raced through my mind at that moment. The other soldier, without thinking twice, began walking toward her. Just as he was almost reached her, she took off running really fast into the forest. I watched her disappear deep into the trees. Now, I consider myself a rational thinker. I question everything, and I believe there's usually a logical explanation. For me, the most plausible explanation is that she was just a jogger, given the way she was bolted into the forest. However, nearly 3 minutes had passed between the moment I first saw her and when she started running away. 3 minutes of standing completely still while looking at me, dressed in tight clothing in minus 20-degree weather, and all alone in the middle of nowhere. Thank goodness I had someone with me, otherwise no one would have believed me. Now, this and there's a note to this. After I did research Swiss and German mythology, I believe that she was a supernatural being. She might have either been an elf or a witcher. The description is more indicative of a witcher, according to the legends, which speak of beings, both male and female, reported through the Alps for centuries. So I know there's a TV show on Netflix called Witcher. I don't know what a witcher really is. I always thought it was just a human being, which this may have just been well. But was it a witcher? Who knows? So in this next account, In August of 2024, a young farm worker in a sugarcane field was attacked by an unseen force that left him unconscious and scared. What began as the ordinary night's work turned into a terrifying confrontation with something dark, shapeless, and beyond explanation. A young worker whose name is being withheld for privacy reasons experienced an incident that defied logical explanation and sparked fear among his co-workers. This incident occurred on August 31st, 2024. Now, on a night like any other on the farm, the young man was operating a tractor harvesting sugarcane. Nearby, a co-worker was driving a truck when suddenly something unimaginable happened. According to the victim's account, a dark, shapeless figure appeared out of nowhere. The young man decided to get off the tractor to urinate and watched as the entity fell from above to the ground and took form of a person. When he tried to return to the tractor, he felt an invisible attack. He was violently dragged several meters from the vehicle, leaving him unconscious and face down in the ground. Now, his partner, not seeing him in the usual place, stopped the truck and went to his aid, finding him in that state. After regaining consciousness, the young man, visibly shaken and trembling, told his partner what had happened. He described how something invisible had attacked him, hit him, and dragged him with unhuman force. He showed signs of pain on his body, and when he lifted his clothes, he found inexplicable marks that showed the violent encounter. He said it was something flat and dark that looked like the shape of a person. The marks on his body aid the disturbing element to the story, generating more questions than answers. The other workers, when asked what they had seen, only received helpless tears in response. This event left a deep impression on all those who worked on the farm. The nature of the attack generated fear and caution among the workers, who now face their daily tasks with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Some say the fight was against the goblin that usually lurks on the farms. Others say it was a Yukamar. Others, the familiar. Many others say the young man now has the mark of the harvest. Now, Yukamar, it's like a goblin, but it's smaller, and it kind of looks like a small Bigfoot, actually. But I've had several stories about Yukamars in Hispanic America, Mesoamerica, and down in South America. So maybe that's what it was. I want to thank Tony for his donation. Thank you very much, Tony. Now, in this last account, in May 2019, a late night drive through rainy San Antonio turned into a chilling brush with the unknown. A small black human-like figure ran along the highway, shifting between two legs and four, its wide eyes and sharp teeth catching the witness's headlights. The witness states, "This happened on May 11th, 2019, on my way home from work. I live in Central Texas, San Antonio to be exact. The whole incident lasted about 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute, but it felt pretty quick and surreal. I was driving on a short stretch of elevated highway, Wurzbach Parkway, if you know the city, traveling northbound between 281 cutting over to 35. I was passing the airport just past Thousand Oaks, where the highway straightens out for a few miles before sloping to ground level. It was raining, and there weren't many streetlights on this part of the highway. I was traveling 60 to 65 miles an hour. My car's a little sedan, so I had a low view of the road. I was the only one on the highway in either direction, aside from a pair of headlights several miles behind me. In the distance ahead, maybe half mile or so, I saw what looked like a man, a human outline, running or jogging on the right hand shoulder of the road. Aside from it being nearly 1 a.m. and on an elevated stretch of road, I didn't think it was too odd. There are lots of drunks in my city, and strange things have happened. Nonetheless, I moved from the right to the left lane just in case. Now, as I approached, I became aware of the silhouette was not getting taller as you would expect as your perception shifts. Instead, it stayed the same height. I estimate it was about 3 to 4 feet tall, since its head was about the same height as my car's hood. I slowed down to about 50 to 55 an hour and stared at the back of this thing, trying to make out details through my rain soaked windshield. As soon as I got close enough for this thing to be fully in my headlights, it dropped on all fours as if it was trying to mimic an animal. I know this was not any animal I've seen. Its size was that of a medium sized coyote, but it was running distinctly like a person attempting to run like an animal. Its hindquarters were raised in the air, and I could clearly make out its buttocks, and its legs kicked out sideways. If you've ever seen documentaries about feral children, it'll give you an idea of the gait that I'm attempting to describe. The only thing is that no human I've seen could run on all fours at the speed this thing was going. The creature was entirely naked and oily, black and smooth. The rain glistened on its skin with a sheen like wet black marble or obsidian. I could make out muscle tone and everything as this thing clipped along. Now, as it dropped to two legs, it lost some speed, either intentionally or simply due to the change in its gait. It was running at about the same pace as a person would sprint. I passed this thing and it looked over its left shoulder toward me. Its face was flat with a flat, wide nose. It had big eyes. I could see the whites and dilated dark pupils. There was no eye shine, which I think is unusual, just those eyes against the black of its skin. Though it never looked directly in my headlight beams, so it may have been inconsequential. It opened its mouth at one point as it was looking at me as it passed. Its teeth were flat and white like a human, but with larger and prominent canines. It had hands and feet like a person. I couldn't make out any genitalia, but it was distinctly male in the general appearance. It would best be described as a swimmer's build. Its body was proportioned to that of another human, just scaled down. No crazy long limbs or anything like that. I fumbled with my phone intending to take a photo, but to be honest, I was so enamored and excited and trying to take as much detail as possible while driving on a dark, rainy road. I also didn't think a photo would show because of the dark, rainy weather and the glass of my car windows. But now I'm seriously thinking of getting a dash cam. I hope the car behind me saw this thing, as it was pretty obvious. I hope I've provided enough detail for an accurate report. I have no idea what I just saw, but I'm glad I saw it. It didn't seem malicious. It looked scared, like it was not happy to be there and just wanting to get off the highway. I got a very distinct impression that only reason it dropped to all fours was an attempt to mimic an animal and draw less attention to itself. He didn't have far to go until the exit, but there was a well-lit gas station and intersection there. Now, aside from a few apartment buildings and scattered industrial areas, the only other things along that stretch are a small amusement park and the airport. There is an old abandoned concrete plant in the area next to the highway. Again, if you're local to the area, you know exactly where I'm talking about. That was my first thought as to where it would have come from. It was heading away from this, though, and towards a populated area, so it doesn't make much sense. I'm still just floored the thing I just saw. I'm totally open to providing more details, but I believe this to be pretty concise. Now, the witness did follow up with a little more information. I couldn't make out much detail, but what I described, its height, gait, color, and muscle tone. Aside from when it turned its head, all I really saw were the wide eyes and teeth. The whole thing happened pretty quickly. As I got close enough to pass, it turned its face toward me, so I couldn't make out a profile. This thing was dark black, and I honestly don't remember being able to make out the nose or ears. I'm sure they were there, though, as I said, it looked like a person just scaled down. Now, the description is very similar to the Malaysian orang pendek, which is what they call the oily man. It's literally a man that is black and looks like he's got oil covered in oil. I've had several of those reports over the years, and since Ken Gerhardt lived in San Antonio at the time, I gave it to him to look into, but I never heard anything back about it. So don't know what it was. So that was the last account. So please use all caps when you post your questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them for you. Tim Mothman sent a Phantoms Monsters Radio gift membership. Thank you. Any questions, folks? Being Halloween, I thought you may have some questions here. Dagnammit, have you ever heard of a green mist about an acre in size that distorts time? I've heard of similar, not necessarily green, but I've heard similar type accounts from people who have visited Gettysburg early in the morning when the fog is still there, where they said that time seemed to stand still. And I've heard it in other accounts too. But as far as being green, I don't know, and I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but maybe it is something like that. Tim Mothman just said another gift membership. So there you go, folks. Take advantage of it. Thank you, Tim Mothman. Jose Sanchez, are those oily beings anything similar to the Pomberos? I don't know what a Pomberos is. Pomberos, or where it is. Like I said, it's what people describe as orang pendak, the oily man, they call it. You might want to check and look it up. I've done a couple stories about it in the past, but it's this guy who's usually naked and looks like he's got black oil all over his body. It's really weird. It's part of a folktale, I imagine, in Malaysia or in Indonesia, but a lot of people see it, and I have seen pictures of it, so I don't know what it is. Alistair B. Lon, do you prefer digital photography or old camera with film for paranormal photography? Honestly, I would prefer regular film because it seems to pick up anomalies sometimes, especially when you're doing psychic photography or something else when you're trying to pick up energy. Digital cameras don't pick that up as well. They don't pick up auras as well either. I don't know if it just filters it out or what it does, but I'd rather use regular film. Dagnammit, it is rumored that a dogman prowls the area of the Cedar Rapids River in Mohawk City Park. Where is this? Is it Cedar Rapids, or is it where is it is exactly? Anybody got an answer to that? Let me know. Dagnammit, it is rumored like it's the same question. Any other questions, folks? Grandizer 12. Lon, what do werewolves say at the end of their YouTube videos? Like and describe. Yeah, okay. I get it. Interesting. Barbara Moore, I see in the questions, what is an albatwitch? It's a small Bigfoot-like creature that is known to inhabit both sides of the Susquehanna River in south central Pennsylvania. Ask Marla; she'll tell you. She does the Albatwitch Festival. She didn't this year, but she's a volunteer for that past several years, so she'd probably give you a better description of it. Cedar Rapids. So it's Cedar Rapids. Is it Michigan? Anything else, folks? Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for showing up on this holiday evening. I don't know. Is Halloween even a holiday? I don't know. But anyway, thanks again for coming in. If you have a sighting, you can contact me at Lon Strickler at famsandmonsters.com, or you can go to famsandmonsters.com and submit a report. We have a link there so you can submit your report. We have a form for you to fill out. And also, if you want to receive a newsletter, a bi-weekly newsletter, we do have that available too. And I'm going to be sending it out this next one this weekend. So, yeah, check it out at famsandmonsters.com. So until we meet again, stay well, have a great weekend, and good night.